12 o'clock on your Friday afternoon now. I know it doesn't feel like Friday, like I said earlier. Once we get into the second week of January, the first full week of January, that is, then things get back to normal. We're still in like holiday mode where the days of the week don't really matter. It's the date. So today is January 3rd. Tomorrow's Saturday. We'll get back on track next week. And for those of you out there that have to work all 5 days next week, it's going to feel like the longest 5 days of your life because you've gotten used to probably holidays these past couple weeks. We'll all bear through it, and we'll go through it together as we navigate through the early stages of 2025 and where we stand right now. I think we're like 240 some odd days away from South Carolina and Virginia Tech, because as soon as you close the door on one season, you're immediately starting to think ahead to the next year, right? Well, you have the recruiting class, the transfer portal, spring ball, all those kind of things. They're going to come over the course of the next handful of months that we'll spend plenty of time talking about as they progress over the next couple of months on the calendar. But I feel like as the dust kind of settles a little bit, because yesterday was all about reacting to the Citrus Bowl, right? Yesterday was our initial thoughts and quick takeaways and all those kind of things, and a lot of us, many of you listening, upset and disappointed for what happened on the field and off the field in a lot of ways, for the things that this game's going to be remembered for outside of the 21-17 final score with Illinois taking the victory over South Carolina. But as we move away from this game, I feel like we can kind of back up a little bit and take a look at the 2024 season really as a whole and take into account what was accomplished, what was expected, and what this means going forward. And yes, the loss still stings a little bit from the other day, but all things considered, a overwhelmingly successful season for South Carolina. Let's go back to the summertime, right? When there's not a lot going on and we're projecting, right? We're looking at any projection we can find, or this expert says this, or this analytics says this about what South Carolina's season is going to be, trying to pinpoint exactly what the 2024 version of the Gamecocks is going to be. And a lot of the prognostication was 5-6-1 team, maybe makes a bowl game. A lot of us here were hopeful they could at least get to 6 wins, but not exactly confident in that. You start the season, rough game against Old Dominion. The sky was falling at that point. You lose the controversial game to LSU. You get steamrolled by Ole Miss, and things just, were very rocky in the first half of the season, sitting at 3-3. Coach Beamer, Mazio Bennett, everyone's like, we're tired of losing these games. And we're like, okay, well, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. And they went out there and played phenomenally down the stretch for the final 6 games. Were in a position to at least be considered for the college football playoff. Came up short, obviously ended up losing the bowl game, which is disappointing. But a 9-4 campaign, if you would have told anybody back in the summertime, you're going to go 9-4, you're going to beat Clemson in Clemson, you're going to win against a top 10 A&M team, you're going to beat that dastardly Eli Drinkwitz here at home, you would have taken that in a heartbeat. Now, yes, the context of how all those things went down can change your perception a little bit, but nevertheless, when we look back on this season, years from now, we're going to say 2024 was a resounding success and hopefully was a tipping point, a tip-off point for what is another successful run of South Carolina football.
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
4 minutes.
I'm getting there. It's a new year.
New year, same late, Terry.
That's right. Okay, so, and you bring up, and you're spot on with it. It's a successful year. And let me ask you a question.
Okay.
South Carolina won 6 straight.
Yes.
Lost to Illinois in the Citrus Bowl.
Yes.
How did Rocket Sanders play in the Citrus Bowl?
He did not.
How did Kyle Kennard play in the Citrus Bowl?
He did not.
How did Nick Emmanwori do in the second half of the Citrus Bowl?
He did not.
The team that won 6 in a row was not at the Citrus Bowl.
For most of it, yes.
You say with Illinois, how'd Pat Bryant play?
He did not.
And my point is, not just South Carolina, but most of these teams. Here's my thought on the bowl game. It's not even part of your season anymore. I don't even know what it is. But my first thought is, okay, is it your first spring game for next year? Well, no, because you watched Illinois and South Carolina go at it. Both squads were in a death match, right, to win that football game.
Because the 10th win mattered to both sides. That's not the case every single time.
No, but so the bowl game is an entity just unto itself. It's not anything for next year. It's not anything for the past year. It is just whatever it is for those two teams at the moment. Like, God love Lane Kiffin. The idea that, and I really hope in my mind and heart that Lane knew that he was full of fertilizer last night.
I'm sure he does.
He's got to. I don't know, sometimes I go, do we give him more credit than he really deserves? I'm starting to think, we think this is some Svengali guru genius, and maybe he's just a dope who likes to use his thumbs too much. I don't know. But last night, sitting there going, well, we wanted to prove. What are you proving? Duke started Mike Krzyzewski at quarterback last night. They had no quarterback. Their starter's gone. I think their backup is gone. Their third-string guy took a job at the mall. What are you proving, Lane? You're not proving jack bleep. To think that you whooped a team that didn't even have their starting quarterback, that because they're an ACC team that won 9 games, you prove something to somebody? And then you can say South Carolina lost their bowl game, and Alabama had zero interest in being where they were at. Alabama didn't care. Their fans didn't care. Those goobers that call Paul Feinbaum might have cared. Nobody else cared in the state of Alabama that the Tide weren't playing in the college football playoff. They're done with them. So the idea that Alabama lost that bowl game to Michigan means something? Like we're supposed to think Michigan's good now? Or they're wow now? Come on. And this is just me, and please think however you want. That Citrus Bowl means jack. You know what means something? Beating A&M, going to Lexington and cracking Kentucky in the head early in the year when we thought Kentucky was worth something.
Yep.
Beating Clemson upstate again, beating, 3 or 4 ranked teams in your 6-game winning streak, rolling off to Norman, Oklahoma, and not just beating an Oklahoma team that was allergic to offense, but basically skull-kicking them for 60 minutes. That stuff matters.
I think it's also important to note, change the perception of how people viewed Carolina versus ranked teams. Because after the Alabama game, and again, I alluded to it a moment ago, Beamer, Mazio Bennett, we're sick of this because it had been 2 years that Clemson game since you had beaten a ranked opponent, and the perception was, well, Carolina can't beat teams with a number next to their name for whatever reason. And you went out there and immediately proved them wrong against A&M. You did it against Missouri. I think Vanderbilt was in the top 25 in the AP when you beat them. And you did it against Clemson at the end of the year. So all that just completely went out the window, and nobody's talking about that anymore. But halfway through the season, you were a program that couldn't beat a ranked team to save your life, and then you reeled off 3 or 4 of those in the back half of the year.
Well, you and I had this conversation. I feel better. I got that off my chest now. Thanks.
By the way, Kiffin has been tweeting up a storm today, so
God love you. Lane, keep going, baby. Just my thing is this. You just nailed it. We sat here after that Alabama loss. Because remember, that was piggybacked with the LSU loss.
Yep, and the Ole Miss loss.
And we said, look, the officiating was horrid in the LSU game. We know, we talk about it. It's a thing. It was bad. We get the LSU game had some extenuating circumstances. Plus, you lost your starting quarterback when your offense was cooking in the first half. But you had them beat and let them off the hook. You had Alabama beat and let them off the hook. And our conversation here on the show after the Bama game was, look, you walked off the field at Williams-Brice after the LSU game saying you were better, which you were. You played better. You were the better team for 4 quarters. You just couldn't seal the deal. The Alabama game, the last 3 quarters of that game, you were the better team and you couldn't seal the deal. At some point, you had to seal the deal. And we had this conversation. The Mazio Bennett audio we played multiple times.
Yep.
Here's a freshman wide receiver speaking up and saying, man, I don't want to lose like this anymore.
You've been on campus for 10 minutes?
This stinks. I don't even know where the bookstore is on campus, but I don't want to lose like this anymore. And to their credit, they didn't. They rolled, man. And that's what you remember from this year. Citrus Bowl, Schmitrus Bowl. You didn't have one of the best edge pass rushers in the country. You didn't have a running back. Not only was important to your run game, but your passing game as well. You didn't have him either. And then you had this Immenwari thing we'll get to because there's an update on that. Look, I'm not telling anyone how to think. Think how you want. But don't let this Citrus Bowl sour what the accomplishments were of this season, because the Citrus bowl games aren't what they used to be.
Yeah, and look, we're still 48 some odd hours removed, so it stings as of right now. As time goes on, that will certainly pass. And if the Citrus Bowl didn't have the aura of that 10th win, which again is something that's just not happened a lot in the history of the South Carolina program, would have been only the 5th time ever, then I think we're having a different conversation. Like, you lost a bowl game, whatever, move on to the next thing. But the fact that you were kind of that close to getting another huge accomplishment, Illinois was trying to do the same thing on the other side. I think that's where kind of that extra sting comes for a lot of people, because that's kind of, and Beamer alluded to it going in, how important that was. That's a statement that you can say, I'm one of only 2 coaches to have ever done this at this program.
And I think that was, look, I get the 10th win meant something, and I do. I understand it. But again, you're going for that 10th win without some really key pieces to your football team. And that's where it's different than it used to be. You used to carry pretty much the same squad into the bowl game that you had for 12 games. Now you don't anymore. So how much can you weigh winning and losing a bowl game where your team and their team both are missing pieces that help them get to where they were? How much can you go, well, when you didn't have your whole team?
Right.
I guess that's where I go with all this. And I understand. And you can grab that Shane cut, Tyler, about the post game, talking about going after the 10th win from yesterday. I mean, Shane and that coaching staff and that team made it a mantra to try to get number 10. There were guys that played in that bowl game because they wanted to win the 10th game. I get it was a goal. I do. But one more time, you are missing 2 very important pieces to what made you a 9-win football team. And again, look, Luke Altmaier got rid of the ball when the pocket was clean in 2.1 seconds. Mm-hmm. Overall, Altmaier got rid of the ball 2.5 seconds, which is really good. The Illinois game plan was to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand really fast so he doesn't get killed. I understand it. It's hard to gauge your pass rush when the opposing quarterback is getting rid of the rock in 2.5 seconds on average.
Right.
But you can't tell me you're not a better defense with Kyle Kennard. You can't tell me you're not a better offense with Rocket Sanders. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just giving you reasons.
Sure.
South Carolina still should have won the game. We talked about it yesterday. They left a lot of points on the table that we wouldn't be having a lot of these conversations because they would have won the game by 2 scores.
Right.
But the point is, this football team, this football program made a lot of improvements and leaps and bounds in where they're at. And that bowl game shouldn't be the thing that leaves the taste in your mouth for the rest of the offseason. Because, again, bowl games today aren't what they used to be. And they're not the end-all, be-all unless you're in the college football playoff.
Right.
So, I was entertained by Kiffin last night. I was highly entertained.
He's feeling himself.
I go, dude, I really hope in your mind you don't believe half of the ridiculousness that's shooting out of the front of your face. I really don't. But hey, good for Ole Miss. They whipped the heck out of a Duke team without their starting quarterback and smacked them around everywhere. And they showed the College Football Playoff Committee they should have taken them.
Well, and in Kiffin's mind, between the 3-9-3 teams that got left out, they're the only ones that won.
Oh, I mean, ESPN put up some stupidity about the bowl game records for the conferences. And I'm like, really? That's what you guys are doing? What does that mean? Now, if you want to look at the college football playoff and say, hey, the Big Ten's got 2 teams in the Final Four. Okay, that's fine. That's legit. That, the SEC is teetering because they barely got a team in. Barely. Okay, that's legit. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that on the show. But to try to make something out of everybody else playing in bowl games with opt-outs and all this other stuff and transfer portal news, come on. Please. All right, we'll jump back in here. Start looking at everything in totality as we move forward in the offseason for 2025. And also, and Nick Emmanwori kind of said some stuff a little bit. We got that next on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford and Tyler Head. We are running till 3 here on the game. Appreciate you hanging out with us. We'll get to you on the Love Chevy phone line, 803-404-6100. Also, our Firehouse subtext the hour, same number, 803-404-6100. All right, real fast, as we've talked about the situation with Nick Eamon-Warry, we discussed it yesterday ad nauseum. A lot of the folks in the fan base confused, some annoyed, some angry, some are like, something happened weird, but, the guy gave us three good to solid years.
I think more people are disappointed on that, it ending that way.
Yeah, because, again, local kid, freshman year, wow, he surprised a lot of folks. Second year, kind of had some issues because I believe, to be fair to Nick Eamon-Warry, I didn't think he was put in the right position to succeed by trying to cover the slot.
Right.
I just didn't think it didn't work. And to the coaching staff's credit, they got him off of the slot at some point. But that really hurt his sophomore year in some ways. But had a phenomenal junior year. Coverage skills got better, still come up and knock the snot out of you in the run game, became a leader, became a playmaker. Everything was wow, wow, wow. Last time I checked, number 2 rated safety on Mel Kiper's big board. Looks like he'll be a guy that'll go second round, third round, the worst in the draft. I'm thinking still second round he'll end up. He's going to go to the combine. He's going to kill the Underwear Olympics.
Sure.
But what happened by not playing in the second half of the Citrus Bowl was disappointing. An explanation, you just need to get out in front of it if you're Nick Eamon-Warry. And he did sort of. You have the in front of you.
Yeah, and again, this doesn't give us a ton more insight into what exactly happened.
But it's a little something because what Nick did, and Tyler will read it exactly, Nick did the things you need to do. You stepped up and addressed it. 2, you took responsibility for anything that you might have been able to do better. And 3, you covered it in hugs and kisses.
Yeah, so he said, as for the ball, and this is following his announcement that he's going to go to the NFL draft, which, of course, we already knew was going to happen. It says, as for the ball, it was just some miscommunication between me and some coaches. We weren't on the same page. I'll take some accountability for that. Never intended it for it to end like that. I never quit on my teammates. Still one hell of a season. Look back and celebrate. Glad I was part of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, he took some accountability for whatever he could have done better there, and that's what you need to do. The miscommunication, he said, with his coaches, he used the plural.
Yes.
Coaches.
And from the information that was gathered after Tuesday, he told a coach, we don't know what coach that was, Torian Gray. I'm assuming it was not Shane Beamer.
No.
Regardless, one coach was told, message was passed along, and again, shortly thereafter, he's in the locker room, not hanging out with the team for the rest of the game. So the full story's not come out yet, and I know Yuva says he wants to give him a platform on Gamecock Central to tell the whole side of the story. We're not really set to hear from Beamer for another couple of weeks.
Right, until a final signing day.
Yeah,
the official signing day.
Unless he chooses to go out of his way to say something about it. So I don't know how much more detail we're going to get of this from his side. So this is Eamon-Warry's opportunity to tell the whole story at some point from his vantage point.
Here's my feeling. If this goes down a road of, hey, there's a miscommunication, I'll take my responsibility for what I could have done better there. Maybe looking back, maybe I should have handled it differently to begin with. All that stuff, the reflection part, all the things you should say. You know what time does, Tyler?
Heals everything.
And Nick Eamon-Warry, people will look more at the 3 years that Eamon-Warry had here than about what happened at halftime of the Citrus Bowl game in 2025 or 2024. But, in the short term, in the right now, just, get in front of it. Accept, I'm I'll accept responsibility for what I could have done better. There was a miscommunication, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know what? People move on to the next thing.
Yeah, sure. Again, we're 48-ish hours removed as of right now, so it still feels fresh. And, again, people are passionate about it. But as time goes on, it's not going to be forgotten, but it's not going to seem as big as it does right now.
Right. It's not going to be the thing you stamp on Nick Eamon-Warry when you think of him.
Sure.
It'll be heck of a player. Didn't end the way you wanted to, but
It'll be the secondary comment
Right.
Hey, how was Nicky Moore at South Carolina? Great player, did all this, did all that, and he also sat out the second half of the ball game.
You know what else helps? If he goes to the NFL and balls out.
That helps too.
Because then all of a sudden that even softens it more because now your guy, your local guy who went to South Carolina has gone to the NFL and played his butt off.
They're playing on the road for the first game. I guess SC State will be the first home game. You know, they flash out the Gamecocks in the NFL during like the third quarter or whatever. I'll be interested to see the reaction the first time that happens.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll change over time, but
sure.
First time maybe it's not met as warmly.
First it'll be a little mixed, maybe. No, you're right. So that's the latest from Nicky Moore, and obviously if anything pops with that, we will obviously let you know what's going on there as well. Other big story that happened after we got off the air, Donovan Murph.
Yes.
Will be a Gamecock, has committed. Again, you got to. He's committed to South Carolina.
Apparently, he was secretly committed for a while.
Yeah. So again, nothing is ever in cement, in stone, until someone signs something.
Yes.
But Donovan Murph has committed to play at South Carolina. I mean, what a pull by Mike Furry.
This entire receiver class.
I mean,
Gidron, Donovan Murph, Jaden Sellers, like just.
You got Malik Clark. You got the kid. You got the kid from PA. Lex. Oh God.
Lex Cyrus.
Cyrus, who you stole from Penn State.
Brian
by the way.
Rowe.
You have got such. And most of these kids are 4-stars. And you got Lenore Sellers' little brother, who's a 3-star. But, again, who knows what he could develop into. He had that one monster game this year. What Mike Furry did, Cruton, wow.
Yeah.
I mean.
Big impact. And that goes along with what we've seen out of guys like Harbor this year on the field in development. He's still not a finished product, but the Nick Harbor we had at the end of the season, a lot better than Nick Harbor he had at the beginning of the year.
He actually looked like a college football wide receiver.
Yeah.
By the end of the year, again, he's still got some improving to do. But the Nick Harbor at the end of the year compared to the Nick Harbor at the beginning of the year,
big difference.
Night and day. I remember in the Alabama game, he made that great play for the touchdown. Remember they threw that Lenore Sellers threw the kind of Hale Harbor up in the air.
Yep.
Nick had no idea what was going on. Remember that? Looking all over the place and no sense of where he's at or the ball's at. You look at Nick Harbor early in the year, and then you watch what Nick Harbor did in the last month of the season, how he progressed as a receiver. I mean, obviously, Nick gets props for putting the work in, but also Mike Furry for working with him to help him develop. And again, he's still got a ways to go in route running and some other things, but now you go like this. Ooh, there's hope.
Yeah, you hope, because again, he's going to do the track stuff in the spring, and like this past year won't be partaking in the spring football stuff. You hope that's not a huge setback to where he's starting back at point A again when the summer rolls around. Right,
and then Amazio Bennett's development. Again, a freshman wide receiver. There was inconsistencies where there were games he really popped. There were games where you're like, is he here? But Mazio Bennett as a freshman, his contributions, Campbell out of nowhere all of a sudden became a playmaker.
He was good for one huge play a game, it seems.
Yes. It was crazy. And just the wide receivers started to contribute more at the end of the year. And again, that goes to them, but also to Mike Furry, the wide receiver coach, who, it seems like the development was happening with this wide receiver crew. And then this recruiting class. Wow.
And Murph is thought to be a guy that could come in and see the field right away, much like Mazio Bennett did this past year.
Yeah, so if you got that, maybe you get a receiver in the portal. You have Harbor and Bennett and Brown coming back. Maybe, just maybe, you get yourself something at wide receiver. Hopefully Michael Smith can take a step at tight end because obviously Lenore Sellers likes throwing to the tight end.
Yes, he does.
So hopefully Michael Smith with a ton of physical ability, can take a step and help out as well from the tight end position. All right, halftime show. If you're on hold, we'll get to you. 803-404-6100 on the Love Chevy phone line. Also, our Firehouse Subtext the Hour coming up. And I don't know why, but we'll talk about juice wells. I don't know why, but we will. That's coming up, halftime show, till 3 on the game.
former walk-on quarterback at Memphis. Juice is loose. Antoine Wells into the end zone for the touchdown. 32 yards.
There's Antoine Wells with a touchdown catch last night in Ole Miss's win over Duke. And I saw it. I watched it. It looked like he was kind of like doing his impersonation of Shane when Shane, got heated on the sidelines at the Citrus Bowl. And maybe he did. And maybe he was just having some fun. And maybe he was trolling, whatever. I got 2 words to just...
Sure.
Who cares? Who the hell is Juice Wells?
Somebody that upsets a lot of people here locally.
But that's my point. Do you know how many balls Juice Wells caught this year?
Like 30.
27.
27? Yeah.
You know who caught 26? Nick Harbor.
Yeah.
Juice Wells had 1 game he caught more than 3 balls all year. You know how many other catches Juice Wells had last night besides that touchdown grab?
That was it.
How about 0?
Yep.
Let's hear Juice Wells' post-game interview. There's not one. You know why? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about Juice Wells.
So Wes and I were debating in the last hour because the initial reaction to this is, oh, he's mocking Beamer, making fun of him for what happened the other day. And Wes actually brings up a good point. Is he mocking him, or because we don't know the full context of everything that went down with Juice Wells leaving here. He and Beamer could still be on really good terms, and he could have just viewed what happened the other day as funny and kind of a wink, wink, nod, nod. My old coach, hey, this is my way of just mimicking what you did, not in like a you're an idiot kind of way. You know what I mean? I didn't really think about that when it happened last night, but that's also possible too.
Or, okay, Juice, here's my thing. Let's say it was about Beamer. Whether good, bad, positive, whatever. Who's still thinking about South Carolina?
Juice Wells.
To me, Juice Wells is that girl you went out with for that summer. You had a great time. Didn't work out. She moved on, whatever. You're in a better space. By the way, how many games Ole Miss won last year?
9. Well,
this past year?
in the regular
Before the bowl
season,
game?
9. Yeah.
How many games South Carolina won in the regular season?
Also 9.
Okay. All right. So the point being is Juice Wells wanted to move on to greener pastures.
He also fumbled before scoring a touchdown here.
Yeah, exactly. So Juice Wells left for greener pastures to go with a more established quarterback to lift his NFL draft stock. How'd that work?
I don't think it did.
Look, Jackson Dart's really good. Jackson Dart, he's an excellent college quarterback. And I get, if you want to go play, I get the reasoning behind it. I do. Was it handled well? No. But you know what? He's gone. And you know what? You survived without him. Matter of fact, your team won 9 games without him. Matter of fact, the unproven quarterback did pretty good without Juice Wells.
Yep.
Let him go. Who cares? Who cares? It's just he's whatever. You know, he can sit around and wait for his name to get called on day 3 of the NFL draft. And maybe he'll look, he's got physical skills and abilities to be a pro. He absolutely does. But you know what? He went from a possible first-round pick to where he's at today. And he went to a situation where another transfer guy came in and blew up at wide receiver.
Yep.
And his name wasn't Juice Wells. Whatever. I saw it, and I just was like, whatever it was, if he's just having some fun with Beamer, joking, saying wink, wink, or if he's really trolling, you know what?
See, I feel like if he was really trolling him, he should have done the T-bar.
Yeah.
That would have been
that
more.
really would have been the thing. And then do the T-bar and then do the hold me back, right?
The funny part was, so the official that's in the end zone, when he sees that, because Juice kind of like snaps and goes running in a direction with his teammates, like he reacts like he's actually going after someone.
I know.
Which, like, I get it, but it's funny in hindsight because we know what he's doing.
Right,
So
sure.
it's like, oh crap, he's trying to go after and attack someone.
How funny is that if you're the ref, though? Because you're not thinking about all that. You're just doing your job, right? You're
And
like,
it's
oh my God.
Who's he going after?
He's going after his own teammate? That's weird.
He's going after the Duke DB that he just ran past.
I was like, everybody's going so insane about it. I'm like, folks, who cares? Who cares? He went to Ole Miss to accomplish a goal he didn't accomplish. He could have done the same thing at South Carolina. Might even helped himself if he'd have stayed at South Carolina with that unproven quarterback. I get why he left.
For how inconsistent the pass game was, especially in the first half of the season, he probably would have been that kind of safety net, reliable kind of guy that Sellers probably would have thrown to a lot.
Think about he would have got some of the Josh Simon targets.
Probably.
Or maybe the Rocket Sanders targets.
Yeah, and does that change the season where you're suddenly winning 11 or 12 games? I don't know. But I think he would have gotten more run here than he had and trying to, fend off Trey Harris for receptions.
Well, he went to Ole Miss and was fourth on the team in receptions, and he was behind 3 wide receivers.
Yep.
That just tells me. And he's in a very quarterback, wide receiver friendly offense. So, again, whatever, man. It's just things turned out just fine without you. That's like, again, that girl you see for the summer that you think you can't live without her, or it was a bad breakup and blah, blah, blah. It's like moving on, and then you meet that girl you should have met in the first place and you wouldn't have met if this girl wouldn't have ran off and got sideways.
Sure.
Life turned out
and
okay.
You hear the other girl still asking about you, and you're like, why?
Yeah, exactly.
We've all been there.
And that feels like what this is. So it feels like South Carolina's still got a room in Juice's head. That's okay.
Fair point.
That's okay. So if you're a Gamecock fan, again, I don't tell anybody how to feel, but for me, I just looked up and said, yeah, so. All right. Okay. So it's like, Juice, you be you, brother. That's okay. That's okay. You had a master plan. It didn't quite work out for you, but that's all right. You got a touchdown catch in a bowl game against, God knows, Duke's seventh string DB.
I felt so bad for Manny Diaz last night because every time they showed him on the sideline, he just looked disheveled.
Yeah, first of all, you're playing the game without your starting quarterback.
Yeah, you knew you were facing an uphill battle, and everybody from Ole Miss opted in for the game. Give them credit for that.
I will give them a ton of credit for that. And I'll say this, and I've been kind of like, come on, Lane, get over yourself. But I'm going to give those guys credit. They came in like a bunch of mercenaries, and they basically were, doing the whole Chicago Bulls thing with Last Dance and all that other stuff. They did not opt out. That is a credit to Kiffin and the coaching staff and that locker room.
Yep.
I really give those guys a lot of props for hanging, because it could have been like Florida State.
Sure.
Last year.
I think Florida State, we kind of talked about this leading into Carolina's bowl game, cautionary tale. When you just say, bowl game doesn't matter, or we'll be fine next year. Momentum's a real thing, man. And when you get your doors blown off by 60 points in a big bowl game, I'm not saying that's why they were 2-10 this year, but it certainly didn't help.
No, and I think I really truly believe too, and I think you're right about that. I think every team is different, especially now, because the transfer portal and NIL and the way this has become like a nomadic existence, sort of like college basketball, not to that extreme, but it's sort of going in that direction.
Yeah.
Is the idea that every year the makeup of your room is going to be different and your culture is going to be different. Because you can't just continue every year, bring in new dudes and have it work perfect. This year for South Carolina, it couldn't have worked better.
Sure.
What a great room they had.
Well, you also have young talent that you develop, too, to get to this point.
And they learn from some of the – look, those young'uns in that locker room learning from a Kyle Kennard coming in the way he did, Knight coming in the way he did, Sanders coming in, some of the other transfer portal guys who came in. Seeing that they just fit right in. And then the guys, the veterans. We forget about these guys, Tyler. Boogie Huntley's been there for 10 years.
Yep.
Tonka Hemingway's been there, feels like, for 7. You got a bunch of guys in that locker room who are veterans who have been here through the entire Shane Beamer regime, and you mix those guys in with the transfer portal vets who stepped in. You had a really good culture, and these young players are learning from guys who have developed an excellent culture. And I'll give Lane credit. Keeping all those guys together is a thumbs up, not only to those players, but a coaching staff that has built the culture. Which then also makes you put a big question mark over our boy Norvell at Florida State. Because we have so many nomadic guys coming in and out, Tyler, it's even more important for the coach and the coaching staff to make sure they're building the right culture.
Right.
Because just like college basketball, the coaches are setting culture because they're the one constant. It's becoming that way in college football. And South Carolina had a great foundation of veterans, and then Shane brought in the right guys to mix in with those veterans. What's Norvell got going on at Florida State? You feel better about what Kiffin's doing.
Well, he's replaced the entire assistant staff right now.
Well, what do you do when you're in trouble? You push your guys out there.
You scapegoat because they're going to come for you next.
Yep. The train the train. You push those guys in front of the train.
That's right.
All right. Firehouse Subtext the hour coming up 803-404-6100 on the halftime show on the game. All right, time to get our Firehouse sub text of the hour at 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
Nameless texter says, can you guys please discuss the kicking? Doesn't make sense. Can't find a better one. Meanwhile, Mitch Jeter is heading to the national championship. Not quite. Like I said, with Jeter this year, would only have one loss.
Jeter struggled this year.
He did. He got injured, I believe.
He got injured early in the year. He was 5 of 13.
Yeah, and he missed a field goal at the end of that game against NIU where they lost. So
he struggled. And to be honest, and Texter, I get where you're going with Herrera, Alex Herrera. Herrera had better numbers than Jeter.
Yeah, for this year, yes.
For this year.
Now, the Jeter that we knew at Carolina, very consistent. Didn't really miss, any kicks? One kick, something like that?
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
But this year was a little bit of a different story. And look, the Herrera thing, we tracked the entire season. The confidence went up and down.
Yeah.
Every time he lined up, you're just kind of clenching your teeth. And
anything outside of 40.
He bonked it off the upright before halftime the other day. So he's a 6-year senior. He's heading out. And look, kicking is such a interesting spot, right? Because anybody can kick well in practice. Anybody can kick well, around their team. And I'm sure through spring ball and summer ball and fall camp and all that kind of stuff, Herrera was probably knocking them down left and right. And we discussed kind of the debate on that spot going into the season. But you get in game situations, that's different. And that was my concern going into the year for a guy that had been on campus for 5 years and never kicked more than a couple extra points. Like, how is he going to fare when the game's on the line against an LSU, when he has to make a critical kick before halftime against an Illinois? And countless times throughout the season, he came up short a lot of times. And that was frustrating.
Yeah, and I get Texter, I get you. Because, we on this show, we talked about it before the season started. We were like this. Just because you've had such a success in a successful lineage of kickers doesn't mean the next guy is automatically going to be good. Just because he's putting on the Gamecock uniform and going out there to kick. And, Herrera, he had some moments. And some good ones and some bad ones. And moving forward into next year, we'll see. Because remember, a couple of years ago, Jeter and Herrera competed for the spot.
Yes, and Jeter proceeded to not miss a field goal the entire year.
And Jeter beat him out. It was close. I remember spring game, they're both nailing kicks. Jeter beat Herrera out, and then Jeter was money. Jeter was absolute money for South Carolina for 2 years. And then Jeter moves on, and Herrera was not money. He just wasn't. So what's going to happen next? I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing, one of the kickers you already have on the roster that you've recruited.
It seems that Mason Love is probably in line for that.
It feels like he'll be the favorite going in. Or do you bring in a kicker from the portal?
Maybe. That's an option, too.
So we'll see. But, yes, look, I say this all the time. And college is different than the NFL, obviously. But you want to have a guy that can run on the field and you feel good that he can crack a 42-yard kick with wind swirling or rain coming down or whatever the case. That cat's got ice water, and he's gonna nail the kick. You felt that way with Jeter went on the field. You went like this. Oh, that's 3.
Yeah, felt pretty confident about it.
You felt good. You want that feeling. And because again, look, that was a long kick in the Bama game. That wasn't a 37-yarder. The LSU game, that wasn't like a 40-yarder. But still, those kicks weren't close.
No.
Neither one of them. And then you clanked, what was it, 42 in the bowl game?
Look, a good college kicker should be fairly consistent between 40 and 50. Once you get past 50, all right. I'll give you that one. If you're 3 of 6 past 50, I don't love that, but it's okay. It's understandable. But when you're under 50, under 45, those are the ones you need to hit.
Yeah, that 42-yarder in the bowl game, you got to nail.
Yeah.
You're in Florida. It rained earlier, but the sun had been out. I don't think there's any wind swirling or anything like that. I didn't see any funnel clouds for tornadoes. There was no tidal waves coming at the stadium.
Tsunamis.
You got to make that kick. You just have to make that kick. It's simple. And again, that's not why you lost, but that was 3 points you left on the table. And if you make that, how does that change? Remember, you had to score a touchdown on that drive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Instead of having to kick a field goal. in the big list of ifs from 2 days ago, one of those ifs is if Herrera makes the kick, and now you're down, what was it, 21-20?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Remember, you got stopped in the red zone.
You could have potentially had your game winner there.
I mean, the defense still has to get a stop, but it changes how you will play that last drive once you get inside the opposition's 25-yard line. So, very interesting text. We appreciate it, like always, 803-404-6100. Hey, it's football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We'll talk college football playoff, much to the not delight of Tyler Head, here next on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. It's 1 o'clock. That means we talk about football and football. And what's the other thing?
That'd also be football, Terry.
Thank you. I forgot.
I know, it's hard to remember.
It is. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. All right, so obviously we talked a ton of South Carolina, and we discussed, like in the first segment of the show, the first riff was about, again, I don't put too much stock in bowl games anymore. Just because your team's different. You got opt-outs, you got guys going to the NFL draft, you got coaches going here and there. All of a sudden, Dow Loggins is a genius, which I find interesting. With some of the shade he was getting.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
It's interesting, isn't it? And then, of course, Mike Shula, one game.
That didn't really look all that different from a Dow Loggins called game,
No,
if we're being honest.
Not really. I mean, again, we talked about it yesterday. My only thing was adjusting to what Illinois was doing to you. There wasn't a major adjustment to how Illinois was basically trying to do everything they could to screw you over in what you were trying to do. But, I mean, look, besides that, you're right. It looked just like the offense that South Carolina ran for most of the season in a lot of ways. So I'm just like, for me, the South Carolina football team was a 9-3 squad that won 6 straight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you win that 10th game, great. Then you got your 10th win in the bowl game, and you can be one of, 5 teams to ever do it in the history of the program. Shane can become one of 3 coaches. All of that is great and positive and wonderful. And that was the mantra going in, right? That was the mission statement.
That was the rallying cry.
Yeah.
Around this game. And I feel like Beamer's one of those coaches that, regardless of what the ball game is, the Duke's Mayo Bowl a couple years ago, he's going to make sure his team understands the importance. But in terms of actual historical legitimacy, a 10th win would have been very important.
It would have been nice. I mean, not getting it doesn't soil the season. It's still a very successful season. The program got back in the right direction and was even better than 2 years ago when you got to the Gator Bowl.
Yes. This season was what 2023 was supposed to be. Because if you look at the natural progression, you went 7 wins year 1, 8 wins year 2. Everyone's like, well, clearly 9 wins in 2023 has got to make the most sense, right?
At least.
And you just had kind of a down year in between that, but now you've seemingly got back on track to where people thought you were going to be.
And it feels like you learned from what happened in 2023 because you saw what South Carolina did in the portal going into this past season. So you hope they figured the blueprint, right?
Right.
So this thing was so successful in so many different ways. And just losing the Citrus Bowl was a disappointing. Yeah, I mean, I won't lie to you. I'm sitting there, and I'm even like, wow, it's kind of a bummer. So I get it. Again, I didn't grow up here. I didn't go to South Carolina, and I was going, wow, that kind of sucked. I was kind of hoping we could talk about a 10th win. So I get the disappointment. I do.
Sure.
But once you breathe a minute, take a step back, sober up, whatever. Get the chalupas out of your system from the tailgate. It was a really successful season on many fronts, and I just don't think you can forget that because of the Citrus Bowl. That's all.
Yep.
But here's Shane, and we'll grab this. Shane even talked about post-game not getting that 10th win. I mean, Shane was disappointed. Here's the coach.
A hurt locker room in there, as you can imagine. A lot of guys that have poured their heart and soul into Gamecock football and wanted so much for them to.
All right, we'll start questions in the room.
Get that 10th win. We weren't able to get it done, but like I just told them in there, just don't lose sight of the journey that we've been on and what these guys have done since January when they came back. And we got a hurt for our seniors that we didn't send them out better, but just told them in there, don't forget this feeling. Play Virginia Tech in 243 days, and we got a lot of work to do between now and then.
But who's counting?
Yeah, no one's really keeping track. Look, it's true. I mean, you can hear the emotion in Beamer's voice. You want to win that game. You want to get a 10th win. You want to send your seniors and the guys who are leaving off with a W. But you can't forget, starting this year, Tyler, outside of the guys and the people in that program, how many folks, and our buddy Gamecock Larry, Who thought South Carolina would be playing for their 10th W on New Year's Eve?
I think I had them at 6-6.
I had them at 6-6.
Somewhere around there, which, hey, would have been a step forward from last year.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, nobody outside of probably Gamecock Larry and, like you said, people in the building across the street would have thought they were going to have a shot at that.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. I remember being at SEC Media Day and seeing South Carolina's pick like 11th or whatever it was.
And the Media Day thing's interesting because they were there on the first day, right? Mm-hmm. Carolina was one of those schools. They got in, said what they're going to say, got out of there, and they were never talked about the rest of the week.
No, there was no one. Like, typically when your school has some juice for the season, you'll get these other tables that go, hey, man, can you come talk about South Carolina? I only had a couple of those that I did, 2 or 3. But if your team is, like, looked at in the mix, you're going to go do a bunch of those.
Sure. Because you're relevant to the story of the SEC for that upcoming year and for Carolina. And I get it, coming off a 5-7 season where people say, 2020, that was fun, but that's not who they really are. Nobody cared. No,
nobody did. And, and Shane got up when he spoke. He goes, I understand you fellas and ladies. I see why you look at us the way you do, but you're wrong. And again, you're going like this. Well, what was he supposed to say?
Of course. And that's in the middle of July. Mm-hmm. All right, we still got a month and a half, 2 months until the season. Right. So you just got to sit on that and like, okay, prove us wrong. And when you come out in the first game and play like you did against Old Dominion, you're like, not looking good, Shane.
Right. And then going to the Kentucky game is like, oh, this might get really ugly going to Lexington. And you go in there and you beat the bricks and the brakes off of that team.
You pants Mark Stoops in front of Big Blue Nation.
Yes, you did. What you did to Stoops set them, and besides their fluky win over Ole Miss, set them in a direction that they ended up going the rest of the season. You went in there and you slapped the taste out of their mouth. And it set the tone for what kind of football team you were going to be.
Yep.
And you really, and we've said it before, you really only got beat once all year.
Soundly, yes.
Yeah, that was it. You should have walked off the field at Willie B with a win over LSU. You should have walked off the field in Tuscaloosa with a W over Bama. The only game you walked off the field and went, whoa, did we just get whooped, was Ole Miss.
That was it. That was a low point.
Yep,
because that was coming off of a bye, and Ole Miss had just gotten beat by Kentucky the week before, and kind of thought, hey, and even if you don't win that game, if you lose it 21-24 and it's a tight game, say, man, we didn't win, but we're right there. You know what I mean?
You. They beat you.
They came in and slapped you around for 4 quarters.
Absolutely. That was the one game where you went. And again, a lot of people point to that fake punt, and I understand. I do. But Ole Miss was just, they had you that day. It happens.
Yep.
It happens. South Carolina had a lot of people like that. They're like for example, what the Gamecocks did to A&M. They were just better. They whooped you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way it goes. I mean, it's not like some back and forth seesaw affair where, okay, well, they had the ball last, or they got this call, or they made this play, or we didn't make this play. No. There were games this year where South Carolina walked off the field going, you had no hope. For that day, Ole Miss they were better. And was it that they had a sense of urgency because they lost to Kentucky and they couldn't afford really to be losing any more games? Yeah, it could have been. Because a lot of times the more urgent team plays better that day because they know they've put their own selves up against the wall.
Sure.
But that was the only game all year where at the end of Saturday, you kind of thought, well, they were better.
Yep.
So this football team going from SEC Media Days being picked near the bottom of the league to winning 9 games on the cusp of the college football playoff and playing in the Citrus Bowl with a chance to post a double-digit victory campaign. Wow. And that's why I was just the opening riff of the show. It's like, look, I never tell people how to feel and feel how you want. But my perspective is don't let that Citrus Bowl get in your craw to where you can't enjoy what was a fun 2024 for South Carolina football.
And again, I think time allows that to set in a little bit more. Again, just 48 some odd hours removed from it happening. It still stings, and it'll eventually pass, like the Gator Bowl loss a couple years ago, which was a little bit different situation, but still, this is going to be remembered well as fondly remembered well as a good year. You're riding a lot of momentum going into the offseason. We'll see what they do in the portal, which, again, you've already actually picked up some pretty solid names so far. We'll see what they do. Again, you don't know what they're going to be until they actually take the field. But guys that can get you excited and bringing in a good recruiting class. Sellers is obviously going to continue to take steps forward. So a lot of reasons to be excited going into 25 where you can prove to people that 2023 was an anomaly.
Right.
A lot of programs have bad years. Carolina had a bad year, but when you surround that with a 8-win year season the year before, 9-win season after that, and if you can replicate something like that next year, then people, I think, will be comfortable enough to say that's what South Carolina is.
Yeah, and I think it feels like, and we'll see, that the program learned from 2023. And I'm hoping the lesson plan going into 2024, you carry that with you. Because, again, you didn't say, well, you know what? We had a rough year because of injuries. It was just those pesky injuries, gosh darn it. No, I feel like they went like this. Okay, we misread our running back room. We misread our offensive line depth. We have got to go get some guys with resumes. We can't depend on development. We can't just depend on, well, they'll get better because they've been here an extra year.
Right.
We got to go fortify this roster with experienced guys to go along with the young ones that we hope will develop. That way we put them in there and let them battle, and whoever wins the spots. And I hope that happens again this year. I'd still like to see them, and there's a long way to go still. A lot of transfer portal left. I still like to see them go grab a linebacker, obviously a running back with a bit of a resume, another wide receiver with some experience with production, and maybe even, grab a linebacker.
And it's important to remember that just because for most teams, if you're still playing right now, you still have a 5-day window after your season ends. The portal is closed as far as most guys being able to jump in it, but I mean, you can pull guys out of the portal whenever.
Yeah.
So just because that cycle is over doesn't mean that the portal stuff's going to stop. And again, we haven't focused on as much because of the games going on this past week and stuff like that, but still plenty of opportunity to bring guys in and guys visiting and all that kind of stuff that you can continue to grow this roster for next year.
Yeah, now you can refocus. Look, the recruiting's done. Donovan Murph is in. Recruiting's over for the most part. You played your bowl game. So far, it seems like and again, we don't know, but besides Clayton White, it doesn't feel like anyone's poaching. And Clayton, there's no rumors of him going anywhere.
Well, he just got a new deal.
He's got a new deal. So there are no other rumors of anybody else right now. So maybe your staff is stabilized. And now you can focus on the portal and really get yourself, okay, who else can we zero in on that we can possibly get in here to make us better? And so there's still a lot to do, but again, the lessons learned from 23 to 24, I hope they carry that as their kind of their process moving forward. But there's a lot of good here, man. There's a lot of good for South Carolina. All right, football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. There was a college football playoff game last night. Did you know that, Tyler?
Not aware.
Not aware. Well, we'll inform our bud Tyler Head about what happened last night in the college football playoff. That is next on the halftime show as we yap football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, as we are cooking this baby up until 3 o'clock here on the game. All right, so we do football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We now know the Final Four in the college football playoff. We've got Texas. We've got Ohio State. We've got Penn State, and we've got
Not quite.
We've got Notre Dame.
Just as we suspected, all the top 4 seeds sitting at home.
Yes.
While the 5 through 8 decide the national champion.
Exactly. Well, think about it, and I looked at it from the top 4 teams in the college football playoff ranking.
Yep.
Only one is still in it. Texas.
Penn State. So
Texas wasn't in the top 4.
Texas was 3.
Was Penn State in the top 4?
Penn State was 4th in that last playoff ranking.
Maybe I saw the next to last one. Hold on.
Yep.
Because I was looking at this thing. Because we know Oregon was there. Oops.
Yeah, Georgia was 2.
Georgia was there.
Texas, because Texas was 2 going into the
we might have
championship
2
game.
of the 4.
So we got 2 of the 4 still. But, and I brought this point up earlier, you remember in the first year of the 4-team college football playoff when Alabama and Florida State both got bounced in the first round?
Mm-hmm.
If the BCS had existed that year, they would have played for the national championship. That would have been those 2 teams, and they didn't even make the championship game. It was Oregon and Ohio State. Very much in the same way here.
Yep, you got 2 of the 4.
The 4 teams that would have been in the 4-team playoff, 2 of those are out now.
2 of those are out, right. And so now we've got 5 and 6 slips in, and you take out 1 and 2, matter of fact. So, I mean, what this playoff was designed to do, it's worked in a screwy way because, again, Notre Dame, the Northern Illinois loss pretty much kicks you out.
Sure.
And Penn State, with 2 losses, would have been kicked out.
Yep. Ohio State with losing to Michigan would have been out.
Mm-hmm. So you look at this whole thing, and guess what? This thing worked. Now, do they have to do a better job of seeding next year? And
I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, because Boise State, Arizona State never should have been 3 and 4. Never should have been.
Well, the intentions of having the bye for the conference champions, everyone just assumed that meant 4 power conference champions. But as things worked out, and the ACC with Clemson winning was so low that Boise State got that slot.
And that's the thing. It's like, I guess what always makes me laugh at the NCAA is you get all these supposedly really smart people together, right, that are smarter than all of us dopes.
Well, this is the playoff.
Well, that's what I mean.
The committee of the playoff.
Well, they're all a bunch of smart people from the NCAA too, right? They're people that are presidents and ADs and all these other really, really, really big brain human beings. But typically what you do when you set up something is you look at every plausible scenario, and you always look at the best case scenarios and the worst case scenarios. And if you truly would have looked at the worst case scenarios before you launched this, you'd have been, well, oh my God, what if there's chaos in the Big 12 and the ACC? It's not like we didn't expect something. The Big 12 was easy because we expected chaos from the get-go, right?
Right.
The ACC, everybody just hung their hat. Well, Florida State's going to be really good. How'd they do? How's their bowl game?
There wasn't.
So whenever you set something up, the people who know what the hell they're doing always go, okay, here's the best case scenario. Okay, now let's go over the worst case scenario. Now let's have plans in place to cover every scenario, and then let's go with the plan.
Sure.
Obviously, that wasn't done. Because like you said, they just went like this. Oh, it's going to work out with the Power 4 leagues. It's all good.
Yeah.
Oops. So they have to fix that.
And you know what? In a prior era of college football where there wasn't as much talent turnover and transfers and all that kind of stuff, they'd probably be right. If we're doing this in 2012, yeah, you'd probably be right that the power conferences would handle things and it'd pretty chalk for the most part. But we're in a new era of college football. Talent is spread all across, and we saw more upsets this year than I can ever remember.
Yeah, and we'll obviously, and I want to get to that absolutely because that's a thing and it's not going away at all, which I think is a good thing. But like last night, because I like how you tried to move this away from last night. Pretty impressive by you.
Listen, I'm not avoiding anything.
I'll be honest with you.
I will talk about it.
You gave Joe 10 seconds. That was very nice
well,
of you.
he took the 10 seconds and stretched it to like a minute, but...
Well, you know what he did.
Yeah.
You saw what he did right in the beginning to stretch it out farther.
So we'll see, he blitzed me like they were blitzing Gunnar Stockton on half his dropbacks last night.
Absolutely.
I couldn't stop him.
There's nothing you could do. And
Nothing I could do.
And you had a strip sack.
Yeah.
But Look, I'm going to give Notre Dame credit because I didn't think. Look, I know Notre Dame's a physical team. They hang their hat on defense. I understand that. And I know Georgia they're not as good as they've been the last 3 years. I know that too. But for Notre Dame to dominate the line of scrimmage against Georgia the way they did, on both sides of the ball, was like, wow.
Well, and my thing going into the game was, and yes, credit to Notre Dame for doing what they did against the opponents that they played this year, where they dominated them. But they had not seen a team the size of Georgia.
Or as athletic with the size.
Athletic on either side of the line of scrimmage. And I didn't think that meant Georgia was going to road grade them and beat them by 40 points, but I thought that was going to tip the advantage in Georgia's favor. And it was very quick. From the beginning of the game, that was not the case.
No, and look, Notre Dame feasts on red zone turnovers, short fields. Their offense isn't built for shootouts. They can score, but they score. This is why I always say, whenever you see points per game, it's not an offensive stat, it's a team stat. Points given up is a team stat. Because sometimes other departments on your team either help you or hurt you.
Right.
So what Notre Dame does, that offense, if you just watch that offense, you're not going like this, wow, what an explosive crew of playmakers. But what they do is they run the ball really well, and their defense no team forced more red zone turnovers this year than Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And they got 2 last night. And I'll ask you, because, again, obviously you've got a dog in this fight. Look, I get it. Hindsight, it's a 6-3 game. You're deep in your own territory. You got your backup quarterback starting. Your offensive line's getting whooped. Why do you put yourself in harm's way by being aggressive? I understand the second guessing.
Sure.
I absolutely do. But here's the thing. Okay, let's say you run the ball and you go to half down 6-3.
Mm-hmm.
The way Notre Dame is whooping you up front, there's no guarantee that moment is just the game changer. Now, the kickoff return was a huge factor in this as well.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I don't disagree with people going, why'd you get aggressive? Which is kind of interesting to Mike Bobo being accused of being aggressive.
Right.
But it's just like, I get it, and maybe it could have changed things. But Notre Dame just laid the wood to Georgia physically at the line of scrimmage.
I feel like if Georgia was getting the second half kickoff, you're probably running it out and going to half knowing you're getting the ball to start. Mm-hmm. But seeing as, again, it was only a 6-3 game at that point in time, you wanted something because you're afraid, okay, well, if Notre Dame gets the ball at the second half and the way they're holding on to the ball, you don't know when you're going to touch it again. Because the way they run the ball, they could eat up half the quarter, and you could be down 13-3.
Well, you saw what they did at the end of the game.
Yeah, exactly. But I see what they were trying to do with being aggressive. But, again, they were just eating him alive with those blitzes. And Gunnar Stockton, all things considered, played a pretty decent game. It wasn't on him necessarily, but when he had no time to throw, Georgia was switching offensive linemen left and right because they had no answers for that pass rush that Notre Dame had. You had receivers dropping balls. Obviously, Etienne had the fumble. Like, it was just a disaster class. You had the fumble before halftime, and then Harrison returns the kickoff to start the second half. And we've seen Georgia come back so many times this year. There was that small hint of belief, like, okay, they're going to figure it out at some point, and that some point just never came.
Well, I tell you, to me, obviously the door was slammed. When you're down 23-10 and you miss the 4th and 7, it's over.
Yeah.
It's just over right there. If you can get it to 23-17, and then now you're in position to get a stop and get the ball back and maybe find a way to pull this one out of your lower extremities. But once that 4th, I know there was still a decent amount of time, but it was over.
There wasn't. And when they forced Notre Dame into that 4th and 1, back to them like they're on 20, it was 7.5 minutes to go. And if you would have stopped them there, you're essentially in the red zone, going into score, where you could have cut it to a 1-score game. Obviously, Georgia jumped off sides, and they kept the drive going, and Georgia still got the ball a couple times, but it was effectively over at that point.
Yeah, it was over. It was. And I was just – and look, Georgia's still – Georgia's this and Georgia that. They were 11. They were 11-3 football team.
This is probably the worst team he's had since his first year there.
And they won 11 games and got the college football
SEC.
playoff.
That is saying something.
There's nothing wrong with Georgia.
No.
It
just wasn't. And look, even them getting the playoff, I didn't have confidence they were going to go all the way because I just thought they were too flawed.
I thought they would win this game, though.
I thought they could have made the semis, maybe the national championship, but I didn't think they were going to get good enough to win the whole thing.
No, the thing with Georgia, too, and we've seen this over these last couple of years, they just get bored easy. But when it's time to play, they wake up and go out there and play.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen yesterday. And give Notre Dame credit. I never saw it coming.
We can talk about something outside, how important this win is for this program in general and Marcus Freeman.
And the irony of Notre Dame being in the college football Final Four. We'll get to all that coming back. And also circle back to South Carolina. Here's some more sound from Shane and the players, really looking at what's been built this year moving forward. That's coming up on the halftime show. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors in the Game. righty. We are hanging. Football in the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, as we are rolling toward 3 o'clock. All right, we're going to get some sound also from Shane, the players, Lenore Sellers, talking about what this year did, building the foundation. We got a bunch of different sound we didn't get to yesterday that we're going to catch up on.
Yep.
As we finish up our college football playoff talk for right now, you brought up something you want to drag over to this side of the break.
Yeah, so look, Notre Dame has been in position in the playoff, in these big bowl games, a lot in the past handful of years. Let's go back to, 1998 is when the BCS was officially created, and we had these bowl games that were put on this higher tier. Since 1998, going up until yesterday, Notre Dame was 0-8 in BCS/New Year's Six/college football playoff bowls. When they got to this big stage, they couldn't perform. We saw them got blown out by Alabama in that championship game, over a decade ago. We've seen them come up short time and time again. They had this reputation of just not being able to compete with the best of the best in college football when they got to this stage.
Right.
Yesterday, they proved everybody wrong. Because, again, there were people that picked them, certainly, but the overwhelming thought was, well, Georgia's certainly the better program and better team than Notre Dame. And if Brian Kelly couldn't get these guys over the hump, who thinks Marcus Freeman's going to be able to do that? And they went out there and did it in emphatic and dominating fashion yesterday. And I got to imagine people kind of looking down at Baton Rouge saying, you didn't do that.
I was going to bring up the same thing. I was going to say, Brian Kelly left Notre Dame because he thought he hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
And he looked at Baton Rouge, where they've won national titles with 3 different head coaches, and only one you look at as a high-level head coach, by the way.
Yeah, but by the way, things are getting a little warm in Baton Rouge. It's not hot, but it's the heat is starting to rise a little bit.
Yeah, so while you're in Baton Rouge with a little bit of heat on you, the place you left that thought you hit the ceiling that couldn't compete for a national championship, truly compete for a national championship, is in the college football Final Four.
And Marcus Freeman's more than just a dreamy set of eyes.
And I will say, I go because again, my point is this a guy that's just a really good recruiter and looks good on the whole media guide? And is he our next our boy Cliff?
But by
Kingsbury?
the way, so my wife got home at about halftime yesterday and we're watching the second half of the game, and they showed Marcus Freeman. She's like, "That's their coach?" Like, yeah, that's their coach.
Well, that was my thing about Freeman going into this year. Is this guy just a really good recruiter who women go, wow, and men go, wow? Or is he a real head coach? Well, he's proven this year that he's heading down the road of real head coach, and I'll give him his props.
For sure.
I mean, that was a big win yesterday. You beat Georgia, and I don't care if it's not as good as the last 3 years. That's an 11-win Georgia team you beat.
Sure.
Big props to you and your program.
Well, and now, because again, on paper, Georgia was bigger. Georgia should have had an advantage in that way. So now you look at Penn State and potentially playing an Ohio State or a Texas in the national championship game. Say, well, if you can do that to Georgia, why can't you do that to those guys?
Exactly. And and look, now you have a game against Penn State, and I'll go the other way on this. Penn State beat Boise State. Okay, you beat the champion of the Mountain West.
Yep.
And before that, you beat SMU.
Yep.
A team that lost the ACC championship game. Do either one of those W's make you go, wow, James Franklin, we were really wrong?
I don't think so.
No, not at all.
Credit them for winning. That's what they needed to do. But we call him Big Game James for a reason. I don't think he's ready to plant his flag and say, I told you so just yet.
Well, he put it this way, he'd love to plant his flag and tell you he told you so, because they got the college football semis.
Yeah.
But the big picture is, no, bub. You didn't like Ohio State has had the toughest path, right?
In retrospect, as we said, if it's been a 14 playoff, they would have been the fourth team. You would have been here anyway. So in a way, it's like, well, this is where you're supposed to be.
Right.
Now you got to go prove yourself.
Exactly. And you didn't beat any heavyweights to get here. No offense to Boise State or SMU.
Yeah, there was never any point, even when Boise State made it 17-14, because Andy Kolanecki, for some reason, decided to stop running the football in the second quarter. It never really felt like Boise was going to win that game. Obviously, they blew SMU out of the water, so they weren't really challenged, it felt like.
Right. So the flip side is all the heat, and deservedly so, that Ryan Day has gotten. Ohio State coming off of that, and I'll say it, embarrassing loss to Michigan. had the toughest road. They had to play a real threat in Tennessee,
Yep.
and they boat raced Tennessee. Then they get the number one team in the country that they lost to in Eugene, and they took them apart. Ohio State, Ryan Day, you go like this. All right, Bob.
Yeah.
Nice work. Nice work, man.
They are finally playing up to the level of talent that team has. Because, again, all season long, we knew that's the most talented, most expensive roster in college football. They weren't shy about it.
No.
Entire offseason. Hey, we went out, we bought everything we could get, got Caleb Downs, got Quinshon Judkins, the whole 9 yards, got this fantastic freshman receiver in Jeremiah Smith. We knew what they had. And for a lot of the season, they didn't have to play to that high level because most of their opponents weren't on their level and they could beat them sleepwalking. You know what I mean? The Oregon game was controversial and wacky, so that's not exactly a humbling loss, I would say. But then Michigan smacked you around, and that was embarrassing. And I wrote him off because I'm like, man, Ryan Day looks like he just has seen a ghost. I don't know if that guy can get this team ready in 3 weeks to go beat a very charged up and very talented Tennessee team. Took him to the woodshed.
Yeah.
Felt confident after that. And then what they did to Oregon was illegal in at least half the states.
Absolutely. That should have been rated R. That was hide the kids.
Yeah.
Because that thing was a bloodletting.
34-0 in the second quarter.
They were on pace for 800 total yards.
Yeah.
Wow.
If they really wanted to keep their foot on the gas in the second quarter, they probably could have scored 60 or 70.
I mean, the domination of Tennessee and Oregon. It was wow. But yeah, I mean, they're the best roster in America, and they spent $20 million to get that roster. And the last 2 games, they played up to their talent level.
Yep.
They absolutely have. And that's where you go, way to go. Now, Penn State, no, you didn't beat that kind of level of competition to get to the semis. Not at all.
Nope.
No way. So, James, no one's giving you all the love and the flowers and all that. We're giving it to Freeman, and we're giving it to Day.
If you're James Franklin, you have the opportunity.
Yes, you do.
You have a game against a very good Notre Dame team. If you beat them, you got probably Ohio State in the championship game and a rematch where you can prove everybody wrong.
Yeah.
But until you get there, until you prove it, we're not ready to crown you just yet.
Because you're supposed to be a physical team too, right?
Yeah.
And your skill position players are better than Notre Dame's.
Sure.
So, hey, Penn State, you got your chance here. You got a winnable game to get yourself to a championship where, by the way, if Ohio State keeps playing like this, it doesn't matter.
Oh, look.
It doesn't matter.
Ohio State's going to win the national championship. I'm ready to throw that proclamation out right now.
Ready? But don't you sit here going, okay, how's Ryan Day screw this up? How's Ryan Day screw this up?
I mean, I feel like they're in a different gear right now.
It's almost like they are on such a heater. It doesn't matter if Ryan Day's coaching them, if Ryan Gosling's coaching them. It doesn't really matter who's coaching them, right?
Right.
It just feels like they're cooking. And that's how talented they are. And we saw it. Look, Ed Orgeron's got a national championship ring. That team was rolling. It didn't matter who was head coach.
I'm glad you brought that up because what we've watched the past 2 games reminds me a lot of what that 2019 LSU team was, where they were just leaps and bounds more talented than every team in their path, and they left no doubt whatsoever that they were the better team on the field.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
Absolutely. And so to me, as much as I watch this, and I always circle back to the Dumb and Dumber look on Ryan Day's face when Michigan's trying to plant the flag.
Yeah.
And everything was going on with the little scuffle, and Ryan Day's going, Duh.
Yeah, I thought he was broken. I thought they had broken Ryan Day. I really did.
Well, to me, and I've been joking, I think I said this with you, and I've joked with a couple people like this, is like the only way Ohio State loses, the best thing Texas should do is wear Michigan jerseys.
Put on the winged helmets.
Put on the maize and blue and the winged helmets. You might have a chance to beat them because they're obviously spooked by the guys in Ann Arbor.
Seems to be their kryptonite.
But wow, what they've done. Big props.
You know,
All right, Firehouse Sub Text the hour, 803-404-6100. As we'll find out what you think on the Firehouse Sub text line next. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Hett on the game. All right, time for the Firehouse sub text of the hour at 803-404-6100. What do you got there? Tyler, head off the old text line.
This was something you casually slipped in there earlier, but somebody took umbrage with the fact that you mentioned chalupas at a tailgate. They questioned if you've ever been to a tailgate before.
I was kidding, just making up stuff. Yes, I've been to a few billion tailgates in my life.
I don't know if I'd want a chalupa before going into a sporting event, to be honest with you.
I'm not mixing any type of Mexican food with my tailgating beverages.
You might miss a lot of the game for that one.
It won't be good. I'll be honest with you. As I got, older in my tailgating life, which is I retired from tailgating a while back, I was very picky on the food I ate.
You have to consider how it's going to affect you. When you're younger, I think we all kind of have a stomach made of iron. It's like, yeah, beer and hot wings and hot dogs and all this kind of stuff. I'm great.
And the other part of it, you also were like this. You didn't really care about the condition of the bathroom you were using when you were younger either.
No, not at all.
No. As you get older, you go, okay, I'm going to walk into that public bathroom at that stadium where there's been 80-some thousand people going in there in different levels of whatever, and now I'm going to have to... What?
Yeah.
So I started to get more selective on a lot of things that I put in my body during a tailgate.
I'll have the grilled chicken and the sun chips.
I would just like to have... Do you have maybe a Cobb salad?
Yeah, something a little light on the stomach. Maybe we could split a hot dog, cut it down the middle and share it. Maybe not the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to could you please just give me some mustard? It's good for my constitution. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. As I got older, it was like, I better reassess this menu.
That's right.
And again, and it's really weird about getting older and tailgating. I was talking to a few dudes at the gym the other day. We were yapping about the tailgating. And it's all about the same road. It's like, when you're younger, man, 8 a.m., let's do it, baby, let's do it, blah, blah, blah. And you're sitting there, like you said, you're eating everything in sight. You're drinking whatever they put in front of you. You don't care. You get in there, and if things go sideways, hey, there's a sink. Who gives a crap, right? I don't care about anything.
Sure.
I'm in. You get older, and you're like, that's really early to get up. I don't want to drink that early. I don't feel like eating that to go with the booze. If I got to go to the bathroom, I can just pause my TV.
The funny thing, and we have had the fortune of being out at Sound and Images past couple of years for our pregame show, and a lot of people tailgate around us, and it's interesting to see the priority shift in a tailgate when you have the college kids, where it just may be the back of a truck and 50 beer cans. Mm-hmm. But then you have some of these other people that have the TV, they got nice chairs, they got nice tables, the food looks really good. They've got a nice little setup there, and there's alcohol, there's drinks there, but it's not the star of the show compared to some of these other tailgates.
Oh.
So your priorities shift as time goes on.
Some of these people bring in real gas grills. I mean, it's crazy.
They're more comfortable in their tailgate than you are at your house.
How many people don't leave the tailgate now?
A lot. Yeah, when we're coming back from games, there's people sitting back there. They've watched the whole game. Parked behind their car, and they've got their feet up, and they got a recliner out there.
Yeah, it's a thing, man. I mean, they'll sit there. They got the recliner, they got the gas grill, they got the big TV, they got their camper.
Yeah,
they're not moving.
It's funny now because, yes, it's great to be in person. You get the crowd atmosphere and reactions and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the information you miss being in a stadium, when you're watching a game on TV, as long as the broadcast is done well, you're learning so much. Yeah. You're getting play breakdown on replays. When we're in person watching the games from the press box, it's great vantage point, but I always have to go back and watch the game again because I know I've missed half the stuff by not hearing the broadcast.
Oh, absolutely. And the other part about it, and this is why attendance in college football has gone down, it's not and the game's more popular than ever. Yeah. If you look at TV ratings and you look at all the other metrics that go into, looking at audience, it's just going to the game is not the ultimate experience anymore for people.
Sure.
I mean, and not for everybody, but for part of the population. Look, you still get sellouts at Willie B, and you still get a lot of people going.
Of course.
But there is a section of our population across the country that says, I'm just going to watch the game at home.
Well, let's look at these college football playoff games that have been at neutral sites. Yeah, you had the home games in the first round, which some of those weren't even sold out. But, if I'm a Penn State fan, they didn't sell at the Fiesta Bowl. Neither did Boise State. That's a huge game. And I'm sure a lot of people are like, I'm going to save my money and either go to Dallas or go to the championship game in Atlanta. So you're making people choose now on what games they're going to because, I think they're going to win the Fiesta Bowl. I'll sit at home and watch it instead.
Yeah.
Instead of going.
And that's where this has gone because you can make yourself so comfortable in your house with your own food, your own beer, your own TV. Like I said, you can get up and pause go walk the dog.
Yeah.
I can pause the TV, go walk the dog, pause TV, go to the bathroom, pause TV, make me a sandwich.
And if you lose, you just turn the TV off. And
you're done. And you know what? Or you go like this. What do I want to binge on Hulu?
Exactly. You don't have to suffer the consequences after the game.
Right. No one's saying don't go to games. We're just saying that's the way the world has evolved. So now you see these stadiums are trying to give you more creature comforts to come watch the game because attendance has fallen back because people go, I'll just stay home. All right. What's trending at 2? Up next, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions on the game. What's Trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. Appreciate you hanging out here with us as we roll up until 3 o'clock. Circle back to some of the Gamecock sound over the last couple days. I'll get the little list out here, Tyler. Because we really focused a lot, obviously, on the game itself, on the Nick Amon-Wari stuff, and on the Shane Beamer, Brett Bielema, what we hope is future cage match. But we didn't take a look at some of the other things about, first, the football game itself, and also about maybe moving forward as the seasons go along and you go into 2025. Let's start with Lenore Sellers, Cut 22, about talking about the foundation that was laid with this current Gamecock football team.
It just shows us what we can accomplish. Just a couple plays away from being in the playoffs the first season we had it. So, I mean, we know what it takes now. We just got to put it all together.
And, yeah, I mean, again, you're very successful. You won 9 games. You had a 6-game win streak. You also came up short a couple times in games you could have won, should have won. And hopefully you learn from all that moving forward that, A, you know how good you can be,
yep.
And B, you still know what you need to do to get to the next level.
Yep.
Here's also, I thought we'll go back to Shane Beamer real quick, Tyler. His cut 21 about the 2024 team. What will this team be remembered for?
I would hope they'd be remembered for the foundation they laid and the amazing moments that they created this season. There's a lot of people, if you look at those preseason projections, very few of them even had us in a bowl game in 2024. I may or may not have some of those saved on my phone as reminders, because there was a lot. Some of y'all as well. Some of the national media. I mean, there's one thought we were going to go 3-9, and somebody thought we were going 5-7. There weren't a lot of people picking us to be in a bowl game, much less the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. And guys like Lenoris, who was voted a permanent team captain by his teammates, and the rest of these guys said, that's BS. We got a heck of a team, and we're going to go work our butts off and leave this program better than we left it after the 23 season. And since they've come back in January, they've been unbelievable. I mean, I know everybody sees what we did the last 12 weeks or 13 games, but just the work that these guys put in from January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, throughout the season. I just told them in the locker room to sit there and be 3-3 at one point in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and there was a lot of hurt and frustration in that locker room because at that point we had 2 losses by a total of 5 points. The way that group came together, I'd hope that they would be remembered for that in life, adversity happens and adversity comes your way. And when we dealt with adversity at 3-3, no one in our program blinked. And to run off 6 wins in a row like we did and have a shot at the playoff going into the last weekend and then to come down here and have an opportunity to win 10 games, I'd hope they'd be remembered for the great moments on the field, for a lot of the things that they accomplished this year for the first time ever at Carolina, and just what a special group of young men they are. We talked about it in our team meeting last night, the legacy that they left, and I said it in the locker room at Clemson after the game. I think it was on one of our social media accounts, but they're the example of what it's supposed to be as a student athlete in college athletics, this senior class, and whether the guys have been here since 2020 or the guys like D. Knight and Torricelli that came in here this year. It's a really special group of guys, and I'm going to miss the heck out of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is also a crew that helped get everything turned back around from what happened in 2023 when things went sideways. And there's a thought, okay, was 2022 kind of the outlier? Or was that just lightning in a bottle at the end of the year? Because remember, that team had come off of a smackdown in Gainesville before they turned it around with the 2 big wins over Tennessee and Clemson. But you hope this got it on the back on the right road. And the wins over the teams that South Carolina beat, you didn't get, I mean, remember, Texas A&M was undefeated in SEC play when they showed up here. They were a top 10 team. It kind of went off the rails after A&M got whooped by South Carolina, but they came in They came in with a head of steam, and the Gamecocks took out the Aggies. That was a really nice win. There were multiple really nice wins, going to Clemson and getting a W. Very nice win. Beating a Missouri team that was ranked and had your number. Vanderbilt had given everybody fits. South Carolina went in there and handled Vandy easily. And then, again, look, Oklahoma isn't what they usually are, but it wasn't just going to Norman and beating the Sooners. It was taking them to the woodshed right from the beginning. There's a lot of good in this year. A lot of good. And like I said with Tyler here a little while ago, hopefully the lessons you learned from the underachieving in 2023 and what you did about it going into 2024 is more of is your philosophy every year. And yeah, look, teams change, they're fluid. Sometimes you'll use the portal more, you'll use it less, whatever the case, it depends on what you have on your roster. But the idea that after that 5-7, that Shane, first of all, looked at his staff, and then two, looked at the team and said, okay, what did we not do going into the 2023 season from that offseason? How do we not make that mistake again? And it felt like using the portal to make sure you have veterans in these question mark spots. So if your young guys don't develop, you have veteran players who might just be beating them out legit, or you have veteran players who are going to be able to step in there and play. If the guys you're hoping develop aren't developing at the rate that you are needing them to. So that lesson seemed to be learned. And this year, you look at the portal. South Carolina's brought in 2 offensive linemen, and they're still skimming around for a possible center. You got a lot of young offensive linemen that you've recruited the last couple of years, but you're not just sitting back going, oh, they'll be ready. They're going to be fine. You don't know. They might be, but if not, you're bringing in veteran reinforcements who have a track record of success. So you're not just depending on the growth and development of your player. You're now using the portal to bring in guys who have been there, done that in other places, that if, a Baugh or an Anderson, if these guys don't develop the way you're hoping, you've got veterans who can step in there and start and play. And the same, look, you went out and got Rocket Sanders last year. Now this year you got to step back and say, okay, Oscar Attaway played on 1 foot.
Yep.
Had a pretty good game in the Citrus Bowl. But you've seen Oscar Attaway for a year. You've seen some of the other backs you have, the young guys. Do you feel like this is where you go without any addition in 2025? I feel like I think you need to add another back. Because, again, you don't want to get in that what if.
Sure.
Where you're saying, well, if Oscar Attaway can step up or if the young guys can step up. I think, again, you learned coming into this year from 2023, you don't want to play that game. Go at a running back just in case.
Yeah.
And it might not be Rocket Sanders type, but still.
That's also easier said than done because there's not a guarantee you're going to be able to land one of those guys because you're going to be, if you're trying to get a high level established RB1, guess what? You're competing with every other school out there that's looking for a running back.
And you might not get that ilk of running back.
You might not. They were going after Justice Haynes. He obviously committed to Michigan, so that's somebody that you missed out on. We don't know for sure if they're going to be able to land the caliber of guy that they want necessarily. If that is the case, can you make what you have work?
Or do you just bring in someone between Oscar Attaway and Rocket Sanders? Do you bring in a guy in the level between those two? That's another thought. Do you bring in a guy, you go, okay, he can't be Rocket Sanders, but he can be part of the mix if a Howell doesn't develop, or if a Fuller doesn't develop, or if Attaway just is who he is, which is a nice 1B.
Right.
You bring in another guy to kind of give you the safety net, and he might not be Rocket Sanders, but can he be a guy that can be part of your mix just in case one of these other guys don't grow the way you hope they would?
We'll see.
That's where I think that's what this portal can be used for not just teams along the lines of South Carolina is, okay, we got a lot of young offensive linemen we like, but we're not just going to sit back and say, oh, they'll develop.
Sure.
You don't know. You had a bunch of wide receivers last year. Now, again, at the end of the year, you were starting to lean on the 2 guys that were already here. The freshman you brought in through the old way and Nick Harbor. And then Campbell all of a sudden said, you know what, I'm in the mood to go catch a 60-yard pass. But
And get off this god-awful Nevada team.
Exactly. So I just think that transfer portal gives you depth that you're not getting anymore because what you're losing in the portal.
And what you have as a benefit this year, specifically offensively, is you have a proven quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And again, go back to Shane's kind of jab at Juice Wells a couple of weeks ago where he said, yeah, we had a guy here that didn't want to play for an unproven quarterback and decided to go elsewhere. Assume that was Juice Wells, who went to play at Ole Miss and play with a more established guy in Jackson Dart. Lenore Sellers proved to you that he came into his own, played phenomenally down the stretch in the last 6 games of the regular season. It's going to get a ton of hype going into the offseason. If I'm a high-caliber wide receiver, if I'm a running back, if I'm an offensive lineman, I want to play for that guy. I want to play with that guy because I know he's going to be a part of probably a pretty good offense, and I can go and be a part of that. And if I'm trying to raise my draft stock, he's the kind of guy that I think can help me raise that. So you have a better card to play at the quarterback spot than you did a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, you have a better card to play. You're a team that won 9 games. You were in the conversation for the college football playoff. You got a lot of publicity and run for your brand if you want to go to that direction. To me, and again, it's always NIL and money too. I get it. But you're in a better spot to pitch your cause than you were coming into this year, coming off of 2023. So everything is going to a nice direction. And yeah, look, are there teams with more NIL money than you? Sure. Are you going to lose some guys because they're getting better NIL deals and you want to give them or you can give them? Yeah. But everything we've been told, because again, nobody shows us the books, is South Carolina is sitting in that middle of the road spot where they're not among the richest, but they're not among the poorest. So when you look at that, your first goal is to keep the guys on your roster you want to keep. And then the next goal is, okay, with the money we have available, let's go find the right guys to help fortify the spots we feel like we need to fortify.
And it's important to note we're only 3 days removed, but that window post-bowl game is going to close at the end of the weekend for Carolina players that now want to enter the transfer portal. And yeah, you had a couple guys in December that entered, but nobody that you look at and say, wow, that's a huge loss. And as long as things stay the same throughout the weekend, you're going to retain most of the talent that you could retain, it seems like.
Yeah, that you wanted to keep. There are guys who are going to leave, and what does Wes call it all
Healthy
the time?
transfers.
Healthy transfer. Guy who wanted to go get some playing time.
Guys that weren't major contributors, and I know there was promise with DJ Braswell a year ago, but he never really saw the field this year.
Yep.
He got passed by these other guys in the running back room, so you don't count that as a huge loss. Guys like that.
Exactly. So, again, you still have a couple days left, but it feels like you're going to hold on to your key pieces and your key players. And you hope you can add a few that will help you again.
Hey, shout out to Garnet Trust, everybody with the NIL that put these deals together. And I know they've been coming out in waves, but Stewart, Lenore Sellers, Jared Brown, all these high-level guys that you're expecting to be big contributors, they're all coming back next year.
All right, what's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. We'll jump back in. Here's some more from the South Carolina football team looking to move forward. And also, Alshon Jeffrey had some interesting things to say we want to get into. It was a podcast, right?
Yes, on Bussin' with the Boys.
All right, that's coming up on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head till 3 on the game. All right, what's trending at 2? Sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging around with us here on the game. Just saw this. Guess who's interviewing for the New York Jets gig?
Oh, we've already crossed off Rex Ryan.
Yep.
I don't know. Herm Edwards. Is he going to go back?
Herm Edwards. That's really good. I like that. I like that one. No. Mike Vrabel.
Okay. Well, a lot of people say he should have been fired in Tennessee.
Yeah, look, I think Mike Vrabel in the right spot's perfect. I think Mike Vrabel's a good head coach. The thing with Mike Vrabel and a lot of these defensive coaches is you can't as a head coach force your offense to play in a certain way to protect your defense. That's not the way you play football today.
Right.
It's just not. In the NFL, you've got to understand that it's a quarterback-driven league, and you can't run an offense. You can't be scared to run offense because you don't want to put your defense in a bad spot. These defensive coordinators continually protect their defense.
Sure.
And that's at the expense of offense. That's not the way you do it today in the National Football League. If Mike Vrabel, once he left, because that thing was going downhill. Mm-hmm. Part of it was injury, sure, but part of it was you had two cogs in your offense that made Ryan Tannehill a good quarterback. One was Derrick Henry, one was A.J. Brown. You decided to pay the running back and overpay a quarterback that truly wasn't a high-level quarterback, but because he had these weapons around him and because you ran a system that fit him, he was putting up good numbers.
Yeah, it made him look better than he actually was.
But the one key piece was A.J. Brown.
Yep.
Because A.J. Brown wins one-on-one. A.J. Brown gets open. A.J. Brown is a huge difference maker as a wide receiver. He is a game wrecker, and he is a guy defensive coordinators soil themselves thinking about how do you stop A.J. Brown.
Sure.
But you decided not to pay A.J. Brown because you couldn't. Because you paid Henry and you paid Tannehill. And so you had to let Brown go. That offense wasn't the same after you let Brown go. And guess what? That little fragile piece you let go also hurt everything. Mm-hmm. And then you had some injuries that didn't help you either. So you go to Mike Vrabel, if you interview him again, have you learned about the things you need to do to be a better head coach this time? And the answer from Mike Vrabel would be, in my opinion, yes, I understand that I have to change my philosophy on offense. I have to bring in a head coach of my offense, basically. If Mike Vrabel would do that, 'cause I think Mike Vrabel is a great culture setter, and he's a great leader, and all those things. Good defensive mind. But again, the fatal flaw is because he's a defensive guy, he protects his defense. You just can't do that. Not in today's NFL.
Well, and with taking over the Jets' job, assuming he's back next year, how do you clash with Aaron Rodgers? How do you deal with that dynamic?
Right.
Because Robert Saleh couldn't do it.
No. And see, the one thing with Mike Vrabel is he does have some skins in the game as a successful head coach. Got the AFC Championship game. I think made the playoffs, his first 3 years, three of his first 4 years?
He made 3 of the first 4 and then missed it the last 2.
And they cratered. Because not the last year they missed, but the year before, they were actually in position to make the postseason, and they went down the stretch.
They were runners up in the AFC South in 22 and then dead last in 23.
Yeah, and so you say, what did you learn? What are you going to do different? How are you going to evolve from where you were at the end of your tenure at Tennessee? And if Vrabel understands, hey, look, I've got to totally rethink how I am about offense, okay, fine. Who are you going to bring in to be the head coach of your offense? And who are you going to let run the show on the offensive side of the ball? That's always a thing with defensive-minded coaches. Some do it better than others. But some, they just cling to, I can't put my defense in a bad spot, man. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Then you can't run offense like you need to in the NFL in 2024.
It's an offensive league, and if you can't willingly put up 24 to 30 points in a game, you're probably not going to win a lot. Right.
At some point, it's going to bite you. And it got them in the AFC Championship game against Kansas City, and it got them in the postseason on the other occasions because, again, you just can't play that way anymore. You can't. So can he sit down and say, look, here's what I've learned, and here's what I'm going to do? I mean, I heard he was interested in Chicago. Whoa. You can't have the Mike Vrabel philosophy Vrabel had in Tennessee with Caleb Williams as your trigger man, because you look at Caleb Williams, if the world works the way you want it, he's a high-level quarterback, and you're basically running your football team through Caleb Williams in the offense.
But again, like you said, if you bring in the right guy to run the offense and be his OC, and you say, I'm hands-off on this, go do what you need to do, I'll focus on the defense, and we'll live in harmony here, then you can be successful. But again, it's impossible to know who that would be.
Right, and that's the point. Just like the flip side of Ben Johnson. Yeah, Ben Johnson's a phenomenal offensive coordinator. What he's done in Detroit is crazy good.
Sure.
But can you now have the Vrabel gene of a leader and a culture setter and all the things you need from a head coach, or are you just a really creative, dynamic coordinator? Again, you don't know that either. Now, I've been reading some stuff in the last couple of days where Ben Johnson doesn't interview well.
Yeah. It is interesting that he's not been hired at this point, because he's been a hot commodity the past couple of off seasons. And that was kind of the deal about Eric Bieniemy when he was getting interviewed all those years and didn't end up getting a head coaching job, and obviously ended up flaming out with the Commanders last year with Ron Rivera, is that he didn't interview well, whatever that ends up meaning.
Yeah, and they flamed out in college at UCLA.
Yep.
So there was two things about Bieniemy. One was there were people, and I didn't like this one because other head coaches had been hired with the same type of resume. You know, oh, was it you or was it Andy Reid? Wait a minute. Same thing for Doug Peterson. The same thing for Matt Nagy. Hold on a minute now. And there were people that thought that maybe there was the racial card with Eric Bieniemy. Look, we know the NFL. We're not going down that road, but that is a thing that happens in the NFL. We know that.
Sure.
It's wrong. It's awful, but it does happen. But my thing that with Bieniemy was, if you're interviewing for all these jobs and other guys have left Andy Reid and got head coaching jobs, are you just not interviewing well?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, in life, in every career-laden business, interviewing well is a thing.
Yeah.
There are guys who are just great interviewers who get jobs because they're so good at sitting down in that one-on-one situation, and they win the interview. But sometimes they're not the best guy for the job, but they're the best guy in the interview.
And again, when you talk about going from being an OC potentially being a head coach, we talk about this all the time with, guys that Beamer's interviewed for coordinator spots. It's one thing to go out there and wow somebody on the whiteboard of, hey, we can run this play and run that play. But when you're having to answer the questions of, okay, here's where our organization is at. How are you going to establish your culture, your ideals, and build us up to whatever point we're trying to get to? That's a completely different set of skills and set of answers you have to have, as opposed to here's the X's and O's of how to scheme up an offense.
Right. Because, again, the head coach, you're the CEO. You set the culture of your football team, and you do it in leadership.
And if you're an offensive-minded head coach, your influence on play calling is probably item number 20 on the list when being interviewed.
Right.
Like, that's great, but we have a lot of other things we got to get straight, because there's a reason why we fired our last head coach.
Look, Sean McVay, everyone talks about Sean McVay's offensive intelligence and his offensive high IQ and all that. You know why Sean McVay's a successful head coach? He's a leader and a culture builder.
Yeah.
That's why.
And some guys get in positions where, yes, great offensive mind, but they can't do all those things at once.
No.
And sometimes you have to relinquish the play calling duties so you can focus on being the CEO, like you said.
Absolutely. And that's where this whole thing is. Like Sean McVay, look, Sean McVay was, 16 years old when he went and interviewed with the Rams and he got that job. He was from the Shanahan tree, all that stuff, right? And when you see a guy that young get interviewed, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, all right. And he had some veterans in that locker room, and he went in there and he flipped that culture and made them a winning football program.
Yeah.
And that's not about X's and O's. That's not going on the whiteboard and drawing up fancy plays.
Sure.
That's about winning over a whole locker room on all three sides of the ball.
Look, a lot of people are ready to write off Jared Goff. And, McVay got him to another level, which I think he stepped up even more since he's been in Detroit. But
absolutely.
Him under Jeff Fisher, it didn't look like it was working.
Because Jeff Fisher was he was a quarterback killer. We're talking about quarterback whisperers.
Yeah.
Jeff Fisher's a quarterback killer. And so you had to bring in a guy to rehabilitate Jared Goff. But you hired a guy who set culture and was a leader to go with the offensive skill and IQ and intelligence. The head coaching graveyard is filled with coordinators who couldn't be head coaches.
Sure.
So again, circling back, Ben Johnson is the flavor of the month coming off of what happened this year in Detroit again. He's a hell of an offensive coordinator. Here's the question. Can you be a leader and a culture setter and a CEO?
We'll see.
Vrabel's done it. He just has a blind spot on offense.
Yep.
But Pete Carroll has won at a high level. Does he still have a fastball at age what?
Again, you're banking on short-term success there.
And he's a short timer if it's Pete Carroll. All right. Hey, it's the greatest day in the history of the world. Let's talk about that coming up. It's on the halftime show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head as we roll up until 3 on the game. All right, before we get to the greatest day in the history of the world, which is January 3rd, right, Tyler?
That is correct.
My memory serves me?
It's also Friday, in case you didn't know.
I don't. I'll be honest with you. I got no idea what day it is.
Well, if you show up here tomorrow, we don't have a show.
Thanks. You know, it's funny. Somebody in the elevator today said, "Hey, I love these 2-day work weeks."
Yeah.
It was technically a 3-day work week.
Just kind of with a weekend in the middle.
Yeah. And now you have a weekend on the end. It's a little strange. It's a little weird.
I said earlier, for those that have a full work week next week, it's going to feel like the longest 5 days of your entire life.
Oh, because when's the last time? The one thing and this isn't a criticism, it's just the way our world has kind of gone. Once you hit Christmas week, it's almost like people are off for 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. And for a lot of jobs, when you're at work, you're not doing a whole lot.
Right. Right. So now you really get back to the grind. And next week is the longest week officially.
You know, when the email you got on December the 18th, that's a next year problem.
Right. Exactly. All right, before I forget, because I will, coming up tomorrow afternoon, 1:30 pregame, 2 o'clock tip right here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia and our affiliate 100.3 in Myrtle Beach, you'll hear men's basketball. South Carolina taking on Mississippi State. We haven't gotten to any Lamont Paris today.
No.
I was hoping to get to it.
We are starting the murderer's row that is the SEC schedule.
It is a gauntlet of booby traps. Absolutely, for South Carolina.
16 of 18 opponents right now on January 3rd are all ranked inside the top 50 in Ken Palm.
It is the toughest schedule in the nation moving forward. And look, let's be real here. South Carolina has won every game they should have won except for North Florida.
Yes.
But they got to play better, man. You can't get off to these slow starts against ranked teams and against upper-level teams. You're going to get run out of the gym. You just are.
Yeah, Mississippi State be kind of a more physical, grinded-out type of team.
That's a rock fight.
That's a rock fight, but, man, you start off slow against Alabama and Auburn, it's going to be 40-5.
Yeah.
You know, at the 10-minute or the 8-minute timeout.
That stuff gets ugly.
Yeah.
It just does. And at the end of the day, you've got to get more consistent on both ends of the court. There have been moments South Carolina shows you some stuff where you go, oh, wow, okay, I get it. They're cooking. Or look at them, the way they're guarding, or they've hit some shots, they're passing the ball really well. Look at them bang the offensive glass. And then there's sometimes they go in these ruts.
I think, because there's no easy part of the schedule, but I feel like playing two of the toughest teams straight out of the gate in Alabama and Auburn in the first week and a half of conference play, it's going to tell you where they're at.
I tell you where they got to be. You're right.
Where they got to be, and not to say they can't get better. So if you lose all three of these games, it's not the end all be all. But we're going to learn real quick where they stack up with the best in the SEC.
Yeah, they just got to get more consistent both ends of the court, because what's coming up now, you just got to play better than you have this year.
Yeah,
that's just that simple.
Now again, you went in and you took down a very physical Mississippi State team twice on the beginning and end of conference play last year. Last time was in overtime, so you can do it. You know what the blueprint is. You have a different cast of characters this time for the most part.
So we'll see where it goes. The SEC slate starts again tomorrow, 1:30 pregame, 2 o'clock tip here in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach. The women go at it on Sunday.
Also against Mississippi State.
1:30 pregame, 2 o'clock tip on our sister station, 98.5 WOMG.
Yes.
So get ready for that. No.
That's on the game.
It's on the game with
Last
us.
night.
Last night was on OMG. I've lost my mind.
It's okay.
Again, here on the game, let me repeat that. The women, 1:30 pregame, 2 o'clock tip right here on 107.5 The Game on Sunday.
Yes, women won 83-52 on the road in Como last night.
They had to get themselves together early, and then they just blew the doors off them.
It says so much for the talent level of South Carolina. They could play a pretty bad second quarter and still win by basically 30 points.
Oh, yeah, they pulled away and won that game with ease.
But you have Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, all these tough, top-ranked teams relatively early in the regular season. Again, we've seen they're vulnerable. Lost that game to UCLA. They are not perfect by any means. They played better since then, but you get off to slow starts against those teams, you can find yourself in a hole against a team that you can't dig your way out of.
And the women have also had the slow starts. So, yeah, there's no guarantee that at some point when you feel like you can step on the gas.
Yeah.
But 1:30 pregame Sunday, the women, 2 o'clock tip right here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia.
Do you think they're flying over together?
They should, right?
Makes sense, right?
Just jump in the same plane. Why not?
I guess.
Absolutely. Take 2 different floors in the hotel.
Sure.
Just make it easy.
Sure.
All right, greatest day in the history of the world. We always go old school, and this is one.
All right.
1920s is right down your wheelhouse.
All right. Let's go.
Because you're the most superstitious human being I've met.
All right.
1920, the Boston Red Sox, their owner, Harry Frazee, I believe is how it was pronounced back then, sells pitcher outfielder Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees for $125,000, plus got a $350,000 loan out of it. So the rumor was to get his wife's Broadway show on.
Okay. Interesting.
And that led to the curse of the Bambino.
That's right.
This day in 1920. The Red Sox had won the World Series. Babe Ruth was an excellent pitcher.
Yep.
He set records as a pitcher in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when he didn't pitch, he would hit occasionally, and he showed a lot of power potential. But he was a pitcher.
Yep.
And then he got traded to the New York Yankees and became obviously one of the most iconic sluggers in the history of the game. And the Red Sox got $125,000.
And an 84-year curse.
Yes. This day in 1920. See what $125,000 is in today's money.
It's good.
I always love doing this.
Yep.
It's always a fun game. And again, I'm not a guy that believes in curses. I just think the Red Sox, as time went on, had flawed ownership, bad front office, not very good managers, and teams, despite having individual players that were really good, like a Ted Williams, didn't have a good enough core of excellent players to be able to win any kind of World Series or a championship. It's not about a curse of selling a Bambino to the Yankees, but that's just me.
But we always love to point fingers at something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. You can blame something that's supernatural on why you're not successful.
Because it makes you feel better.
Makes you feel better. $125,000 in 1920 is equivalent to $1.9 million in today's money.
So you just sold Babe Ruth for $1.9 million today.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. So the curse of the Bambino started on this day in 1920. 1973, speaking of the Yankees, a 12-member group purchased the New York Yankees. Here's the funniest part. You know who owned the Yankees before this happened in 1973?
I don't.
CBS.
Oh.
The Columbia Broadcasting System.
Interesting.
Owned the Yankees, and they had become...
Now, were they broadcasting their games nationally at that point?
No, but they owned the Yankees. They were sold to this 12-member group for $10 million. This group was headed by a guy named George Steinbrenner. That turned out pretty well.
You said 1970, right?
1973.
73. All right, $10 million for the most profitable sports brand or one of the most profitable sports brands on the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. $10 million in, hold on, it's 10, 100, 0. Okay. That is worth, it'll calculate. Wow, that's only $7.2 million in today's money. Or excuse me, $72 million in
And what are the
money.
Yankees worth?
Billions.
Yeah.
In today's money.
So you bought the Steinbrenner family, heading a 12-member group, bought the team for $10 million, and it's worth billions.
What a steal.
Massive steal. Massive steal. And very successful. They've won a good amount of World Series, and they've been to the World Series, got the World Series last year for the first time since 2009.
Yep.
But they've been a pretty successful franchise on the field as well.
Well, and they routinely have the biggest payroll of just about everybody every
Spend
single
the
year.
most money. The urinals at Yankee Stadium are worth more than a lot of people's houses.
They're worth more than the Oakland A's
Yes.
or Las Vegas A's.
Or the Tampa Rays. All right, last one real quick. 1993, the Buffalo Bills staged the biggest comeback in pro football history. They were down 35-3 to the Houston Oilers in an NFL playoff game. Made a huge run, came back, won the game 41-38 in overtime. Frank Reich threw 4 touchdown passes off the bench as the Bills had that gigantic comeback. Frank Reich, by the way, for years was the quarterback behind the greatest comeback in college football history as well, as Maryland was down huge to the University of Miami and came back and beat the Hurricane.
Well, how about that?
How about that guy? in that game, it's known for, I think that's the game where Buddy Ryan went after Kevin Gilbride, the offensive coordinator, and tried to noogie him on the head.
That's right.
It was all sorts of craziness. That was in 1993 on this day. Greatest day in the history of the world. We'll come back, do the handoff. Sponsored by Little Pigs with Jay Phillips, and also get your Firehouse Sub text the hour next on the halftime show on the game.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Ed and Terry Ford along with you on your Friday here on the game. Jay and Elijah coming up in a couple minutes here for the post-game show to wrap up your week. Time to hit our Firehouse Subs text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Henry weighs in and says, I think Ohio State's going to turn out like LSU in 2019 and boat race everybody to the championship and then get beat in the national championship by Notre Dame or Penn State. So they're predicting they will beat Texas thoroughly and then lose to either Notre Dame or Penn State, whoever advances out of the Orange Bowl next week.
I mean, that could happen.
By the way, are you – and look, the Sugar Bowl was originally going to go on, obviously, New Year's night, and then they moved it up 24 hours to last night. Both programs, rightfully so, argued, hey, we're already losing 2 days to Penn State. Let's move this thing up earlier on the day so we can – not lose more time. Do you buy that Notre Dame having 2 less days to prepare in addition to traveling is going to be a disadvantage?
No, I don't. I think that's one of those narratives that plays well if you lose.
Sure.
But we've seen teams with less rest win, right? In football, where it's the NFL, college football, whatever. We've seen teams get too much rest. Look at the teams that all got rest.
All of them.
They all got beat.
And I know Greg Sankey went to bat for for both schools. But let me and so this to kind of follow along with Tyler's question there. When is the average college football game played? What day of the week?
Saturday.
And then what happens the following Saturday?
Then you have another one.
All right. Well, this is a Thursday to a Thursday, so it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think they'll be okay. I mean, I get what Greg said.
I'm not trying to be a smartass. I'm just saying,
I agree. I agree with
you play on Saturday, then you play again on Saturday.
I just think sometimes we talk about this short rest and this or that. Like we've just seen teams in the NFL play 3 games in 11 days, and I think the Ravens went 3-0. I mean,
which is pretty bleeping awesome.
Well, and look who they beat through that gauntlet.
It was pretty impressive.
It's just the idea that I think that's a convenient excuse if you lose. You can always come circle back to it. But I don't think that's a reason you lose.
And if anything, in my honest opinion, I believe that the Texas Ohio State guys who will then have 11 or 9 days, excuse me, they'll be chomping at the bit, man. They'll be like, I'm ready to play a game. Yeah. So I kind of like the fact that it's a week. It's a week.
And let's face it.
Well, I think it's more about the fact that Penn State gets extra days. But
that's the thing. All you're gonna and I don't disagree. But here's what it is, Tyler. Think about it. Let's all of us, unless you're already there, let's all of us go back to when we were 20, 21 years old. Do you really want another day of film study? Right? I mean, seriously. I know you'll try to find every little nuanced thing you can, and that's what coaches will do, but you will get bored out of your mind. I'm ready to go hit somebody.
And think about that age. You bounce back pretty good from everything, man. I understand it in theory, but I think in the bigger picture, it's not going to matter.
I don't think it will. Again, it will be a regular 7-day week for those guys. And based on how regimented college football coaches are anyway, I think that actually, I'm not going to say it benefits per se, but I don't think it has any negative impact.
Good.
I'll just throw this out there. I think it's ridiculous. 2 teams effectively from the Mid-Atlantic and Midwest have to go down to Florida to play a semifinal game.
Yeah,
I'll die on that hill.
Will you die on that hill?
Yeah. You should.
They should play that game outdoors in the Dakotas.
They should play it. Well, they should play it. Who's the higher seeded team?
Because Notre Dame would be the higher seed?
No, Penn State.
Penn State is. Penn State has a stadium, right?
No, not anymore. Well, they're using it for ice capades right now.
I was say, it'd be great if they just played at Happy Valley.
We're all together on this. We'd love to see. We saw the electricity of those opening round games on campus. That's phenomenal. And I think that you do earn a home field advantage. You should be able to have it more than just. What's so ironic? You get a bye, but you can't play on your home field.
Well, believe me,
that's going to change.
I have a story from Media Days 23 that I'll tell later.
Okay. But you and I mean, I've said to you, and we both know why it doesn't happen. We get it, but I still think they should be on campus.
Oh, I get it, but I think it's just ridiculous at this point in time.
And look, I love bowls, but trying to circumvent them into the new 12-team playoffs, just getting a little.
Not a bowl game.
It's not a bowl game. Here's the other part,
it's a playoff game.
The travel expenses you're asking people to incur.
Yes. Yeah. 4 times in a month.
Right.
Well,
It's
and
just
you
craziness.
have empty, but you had not empty ballparks, but you don't have capacity.
Because you're making them choose.
And
Like,
it's-
well,
Yeah.
do I go to the home game or
ready?
do I try and go to Dallas?
And we all know it's corporate and sterile
Yeah.
compared to the venue on your campus.
I applaud the effort of trying to keep them in bowls, wink, wink, air quote bowls, but I don't see it lasting.
Oh,
much
and there's the
longer.
money that the bowl people shovel
Yeah,
and the
you
corporate
can-
people shovel.
Disney will make you the money back.
All right, what do you got coming up? Quick.
A lot of football, Langston and DC as well.
All right,
and some
cool.
hoops.
Yeah, well, post-game show. Tyler, good job.